There are moments in life that fracture sound, when silence becomes louder than any scream. Mine began with the sound of wood breaking. The frame hit the edge of the bin, cracked, and slid face down into coffee grounds. My wife, ex-wife, though I didn't know it yet, didn't even look up. Her fingers glided across her phone, a faint smile curving her lips. That smile used to belong to me. "You can't keep giving me handmade junk," she said, her voice flat, polished. Her words were the sound of scissors cutting a ribbon, ceremonial, final. Our daughter laughed. It wasn't a child's laugh anymore. It was sharp, metallic, borrowed from someone older. "You can't compete with Mom's new boyfriend, Dad." Then she turned back to her cereal, as if nothing had happened. And in that still kitchen, framed by a dying marriage, a daughter I barely recognized, and the faint scent of varnish, something inside me clicked. Quietly, perfectly, like a lock turning in its place. That was the night I stopped being sentimental. That was the night I started carving something else entirely. The frame had taken me 3 weeks to make. Ash wood, hand-sanded, with tiny grooves running along the edges where light could hide and breathe. I had carved her name, Elena, into the grain so subtly that only someone who looked closely, who cared, would ever see it. She didn't. I remember her perfume that morning, the same she'd worn the first time we kissed. That memory clung to her, mocking me. While she got ready for another night, with friends, I sat at the table staring at the crack in the wood I'd salvaged from the bin. Coffee had stained one corner. The smell of it had sunk into the fibers like guilt. When she left, I didn't stop her. I watched from the window, the red lipstick, the white coat, the laugh on her phone call. And then I turned to the frame, washed it, and set it to dry. I had spent years trying to understand her. Now I would learn to understand truth instead. At first, I thought revenge meant noise, confrontations, tears, slamming doors. But that was a fantasy for people who needed to feel powerful, not be powerful. I began quietly, methodically. Her phone would buzz at night when she thought I was asleep. I memorized numbers. I traced patterns. Thursday nights. Always Thursday. Always the same part of the city. My studio became my refuge, the place she once called your little cave. In that dark space, where sawdust floated like golden dust in slanted moonlight, I worked with a new purpose. I wasn't carving frames anymore. I was carving evidence. Each night, the knife in my hand reflected something new. Anger reshaped into focus, heartbreak polished into patience. I contacted an old friend, Julian, who ran a small art gallery downtown. He owed me a favor from years back, when I'd helped him rebuild after a flood destroyed half his collection. "Got something new?" he asked. "Not yet," I said, "but soon." When I hung up, I realized I meant it in more ways than one. The proof came not through confrontation, but through rhythm. Humans are predictable when they think they're clever. Every Thursday, she met friends. Every Thursday, she wore the same perfume, one she'd stopped using around me. Every Friday morning, she'd hum in the kitchen, light, distracted, glowing. One Thursday, I followed. No confrontation, no drama, just distance. From across the street, I saw her enter a small restaurant. And then, him. The way he stood when he saw her, nervous, proud, rehearsed, told me everything. He reached for her waist. She didn't stop him. I didn't take photos. I didn't need them. The truth, when it's that clear, doesn't require proof. That night, when she came home, I asked only one question. How was dinner? Her fork paused midair. Just half a second. Half. And then she smiled. Delicious, I nodded. Good. That single word carried every secret I had collected. She didn't know it, but the game had already shifted. Because love, when betrayed, doesn't vanish. It evolves. It learns to build, not homes or families, but consequences. By the second week, the distance between our coffee cups had grown. Literally. 2 mugs on the table, one always inching further away from the other. She didn't notice. Elena had perfected the art of living beside me without touching me. Her laughter lived in another frequency, one I could no longer hear. And yet, every morning, she brewed my coffee. Habit, not care. A ritual performed out of obligation, not love. I studied her like a stranger, the way she avoided eye contact, the faint flicker of irritation when I asked simple questions. She wasn't cruel. Cruelty would have been human. No, she was polite, indifferent. The kind of indifference that feels colder than hate. Our daughter, Sophia, had started copying her mother's tone. Quick remarks, dismissive smiles. It wasn't her fault. She was 14, still learning who to be. But the way she looked at me sometimes, as if I were an old painting taking up wall space, that hurt in quiet, precise ways. One morning, I caught my reflection in the glass window and realized I looked more like a ghost haunting the home I built. That realization didn't break me. It focused me. If I was invisible, then invisibility could be my weapon. That night, while Elena slept, I opened my laptop. The sound of keys was thunder in the dark. Bank statements, cloud backups, metadata. Everything leaves a fingerprint, even betrayal. By dawn, I had a map, names, locations, timestamps, and one recurring thread, the man. Him, her friend from the gym, the one whose cologne still lingered in her car. I didn't hate him. He was just a symptom. She was the disease. When people think of revenge, they imagine fury. For me, it came with precision. Measured cuts, clean lines. In my studio, I began a new piece. Oak, dark and dense. Not for warmth, but for strength. I carved a hollow frame, deeper than usual, designed to hold a secret within it. Something no one would notice unless they looked from behind. Sophia peeked into the room once. "Still working on those boring frames?" she teased. I smiled. "Something like that." She rolled her eyes. "Mom says you should just buy gifts. Normal people buy gifts." Normal people. The words stayed with me like a splinter. Elena started coming home later, her excuses mechanical. Traffic. Late meeting. You know how it is? I nodded each time, the picture of calm acceptance. She mistook my silence for surrender. In truth, silence was my way of measuring how much of herself she'd already lost. Julian, my gallery friend, called one evening. "You've been quiet. That means you're working on something dangerous, doesn't it?" I chuckled. "Maybe. It's personal." "Good. Personal sells." That word, sells, stuck with me. Not because I cared about money, but because Elena did. Everything she valued had a price tag. Every gesture was a transaction. So I would give her one last thing, something priceless, that money couldn't buy back once lost. 3 weeks later, I stood in front of the gallery window at midnight. Julian had just finished arranging the lighting. Under the soft white glow, my repaired frame looked ethereal. You couldn't see the crack anymore, unless you knew where to look. The flaw had become the feature. Julian exhaled. "This is haunting." "It's a gift," I said quietly. "For who?" "For someone who threw it away." He gave me a long look. "You sure you want to display something that personal?" "Very sure," he shrugged. "I'll label it the discarded gift. How does that sound?" "Perfect." When I walked home that night, snow began to fall. Light, scattered, hesitant. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Elena was already asleep when I entered. Sophia's room glowed blue with phone light under the door. For the first time in months, I felt still. Not peaceful, not happy. Just still, like the silence before a storm learns its name. The next morning, everything began to unfold exactly as I'd hoped. Julian called at noon. "Michael, you're not going to believe this." "What?" "The frame sold." I laughed. "Sold? You're joking." "I'm serious. A collector came in early. He said it had soul, paid $150,000 on the spot." My silence made him nervous. "You okay?" Yeah, I said slowly. I'm good. I spent the rest of the day watching Elena move through the house like a stranger who'd rented my life. She laughed on the phone again, talked about meeting a friend for drinks. I told her to wear the white coat. It looked good on her. She didn't notice the edge in my tone. That evening, I suggested dinner out. Our anniversary was near after all. She hesitated, then smiled. Guilt made her agreeable. Sophia rolled her eyes, but joined us. We parked downtown. I took a slightly different route, just enough to make the coincidence believable. And then we stopped, in front of the window. The frame hung there like a secret finally allowed to breathe. Clean, glowing, beautiful. The small brass tag beneath it read, "The Discarded Gift," by Michael Hale, $150,000. Sophia blinked. Wait, that looks like... It is, I said softly. Elna froze. Her reflection stared back at her, the same way she'd once looked at me, as if trying to remember who I was. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The silence between us wasn't cruel anymore. It was just. That night, Elna didn't say a word on the drive home. The city lights strobed across her face, painting her in stripes of guilt and silence. Sophia scrolled through her phone in the back seat, half curious, half embarrassed by her parents. When we got home, she went straight to her room. Elena lingered in the hallway, her hand brushing the wall as if trying to anchor herself in a house that suddenly felt foreign. Who bought it? She asked finally. I don't know, I said. Someone who knows value when they see it. She turned to me then, eyes wide, voice trembling with something between anger and disbelief. Was this your way of humiliating me? I smiled faintly. No, this was my way of telling the truth. She didn't reply. She went upstairs. The door closed with a soft click that felt heavier than any slam. The next morning, her side of the bed was cold, her closet half empty, her car gone. On the kitchen counter, a note. I can't do this anymore. You've changed. You scare me. I read it once, folded it neatly, and placed it in the same trash bin she had thrown my frame into months before. The symmetry felt perfect. A week later, the gallery invited me for an interview. Apparently, The Discarded Gift had gone viral. Blogs, art magazines, even morning shows were calling it a love story told through heartbreak and craftsmanship. Julian was ecstatic. You're a sensation. Everyone wants to know what inspired it. I laughed softly. If I told them, they wouldn't believe me. He shrugged. Then lie. That's what artists do. But when the interviewer asked, what does the discarded gift really mean? I didn't lie. It's about seeing beauty in what others throw away, I said. About how sometimes we give the best parts of ourselves to people who can't recognize value without a price tag. The interviewer smiled. That's heartbreakingly honest. Honesty is underrated, I said. They printed my words the next day under the headline, The Man Who Turned Betrayal into Art. Elna didn't call, but her friends did, quietly, awkwardly. Apologies disguised as curiosity. So, we saw your piece. It's incredible. I thanked them politely, knowing they weren't calling for me. They were calling to see how much I knew. 2 months passed. The house grew quiet, peaceful. I filled the silence with the sound of chisels, brushes, and rain. Then, one afternoon, Sophia came home early from school. She stood in the doorway of my studio, holding her phone like it weighed a ton. Dad, she said quietly, Mom's in trouble. She showed me a video. Elena, standing outside a hotel, arguing with the man she'd left me for. He was shouting, she was crying. The internet was already eating her alive. Can you help her? Sophia asked, voice trembling. I looked at my daughter, at her innocence trying to survive between two adults' pride, and I realized what mattered most. That night, I sent Elna a message. There's still one thing left that belongs to you. Come to the gallery tomorrow, noon. She didn't respond, but she came. When she arrived, the gallery was empty except for the two of us. Under the same light where The Discarded Gift once hung, A new frame waited, smaller, humbler, carved from lighter wood. On the back, a single engraving: "Forgiveness weighs less than vengeance." She stared at it, tears welling. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "I know," I said softly. "That's why it's a gift." She looked at me for a long time, not as an ex-wife, not as a stranger, but as someone finally seeing the damage she'd done. She left without another word, but this time she didn't slam the door. Months later, the gallery held an exhibition of my work: frames, sculptures, fragments of lives captured in wood and silence. A journalist asked me again, "What made you start carving?" I smiled. "Love," I said. "And what happens when love forgets how to see?" After the show, I walked through the empty city streets. Snow was falling again, soft, slow, deliberate. I passed a small cafe window and froze. Inside, Elena sat with Sophia, laughing. It wasn't the old laughter, not sharp, not cruel. It was real, softer, human. They hadn't seen me, and for the first time, I didn't need them to. I turned, walked away, hands warm in my pockets, heart lighter than it had been in years. Sometimes revenge gives you closure, but sometimes forgiveness gives you peace. And peace, that's the masterpiece no one can sell.